Well, hello and good evening. Tonight's reflection is about Jacob. We're considering this Old Testament character of Jacob, one of the three patriarchs. The story is a good one. It features in Genesis 25 from verse 19 to the end of chapter 35. We heard in the last couple of weeks about his grandfather Abraham being promised that he would be blessed by God and have descendants as numerous as the stars in heaven. We heard that Abraham lived believing God's promise over very many years, even after his wife Sarah thought the promise was impossible because they were so old. We heard about angelic visitors to Abraham's camp at the Oaks of Mamre. They said that a child would be born to Sarah within the year, and Sarah had laughed out loud. But God was true to the promise, and a year later, Isaac was safely delivered to great joy and celebration. Isaac was the only son of Abraham and his wife Sarah, and when it came to time for him to marry, the bride chosen was a cousin, Rebecca. After 20 years waiting, Rebecca gave birth to twin boys. The elder, Esau, named to reflect that he was born red and hairy, followed by Jacob, holding tightly to his brother's heel. The twins grew up quite different in skills and in character, and Isaac's favorite was Esau, a skillful hunter, a man of the field who made great game stew. And Rebecca preferred Jacob, who was a quiet man who lived in the tents. Perhaps Esau was a man who lived in the moment. Jacob maybe was more thoughtful, more perceptive, and as we shall see, he was also on the lookout for a main chance. So one afternoon, Esau came in hungry from hunting to smell Jacob's lentil stew and new bread. "I am famished. Give me a bowl of that before I expire." "Okay, food now in exchange for your birthright. Agreed?" Yes, deal. I did need something to eat now." Esau showed no respect for his role as eldest son, and Jacob resorted to trickery, not what one might expect from the founding father of a nation. When Isaac was old and blind, he thought death was not far away, and he called Esau to him. "Go out with your bow and make me one of those tasty game stews, and after I've eaten, I'll tell you what you'll get when I die, and I'll bless you, my eldest son." Esau rushed out to hunt, but listening was Rebecca. She called Jacob. "Go and fetch a couple of young kids to cook for your father. I have a plan to make you the heir." So when his son arrived carrying a dish smelling delicious, Isaac welcomed him. The voice seemed softer than Esau's, but the arms were hairy and his clothes smelled of the outdoors. But Jacob had put on Esau's clothes and wrapped goatskin around his arms and the back of his neck. His father was fooled, and he gave him his blessing. Control of the family and good fortune would be Jacob's. But Jacob was a cheat, and surely God doesn't work with someone who thinks only of themselves. Shortly, Esau arrived back at camp with the food he'd caught. "Here, old father, caught and cooked just for you." "Well, who just received my blessing? He smelled right. He was as hairy as you." Jacob. The blessing had been given and could not be recalled. Isaac had been fooled, and Esau was very, very angry. "I'll kill him. He has deceived our father and cheated me. I will kill him." Rebekah heard Esau's anger. "Go, Jacob, run. Go to my brother Laban in Padan Aram and stay until your brother's anger is spent." So Jacob ran and ran. When darkness came, he lay down in the open using a stone for a pillow. At last, afraid, alone, ashamed. He was ready to listen to God, and he fell asleep. As he slept, he watched angels as they used a stairway set up between earth and heaven, and he was aware that God was there and speaking to him. I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. The promise I made to them I make to you. This is your land. Your descendants will be very many, and all the families on earth will be blessed through you. I will always be with you and protect you, and I will bring you back to this land. When Jacob woke, he was awestruck. Surely God is in this place, and I did not know it. This is the gateway to heaven. He stood his pillow stone on end to be a pillar, to mark the place, and he called it Bethel. He met the reality of God in a dream, and it changed his life. He began a relationship with the Almighty who would guide and protect him, and he would honor God. God would work with him despite the deception, and Jacob would discover wisdom. When he reached his uncle's, he met the younger daughter Rachel as she came out to water her flock from the well, and instantly fell in love with her. He stayed a month and then arranged to work 7 years to marry Rachel. Well, the years passed and the wedding took place, but the veiled bride was not Rachel, but her elder sister Leah. The cheat had been cheated. He had to agree to work another 7 years to marry Rachel as well. When he left 20 years later, he was a very different man. In that time, he'd been exploited and used. He'd grown in wisdom. Finally, he knew it was time to go home and face Esau's wrath. Jacob now had 2 wives, 2 concubines, 11 sons, and a daughter. He was very aware that God had been with him in the difficulties and blessed him with flocks and herds. Would he be with him in the next test? Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother with gifts of livestock to show peaceful intention. He was told Esau was on his way with 400 armed men, so the night before they would meet, Jacob sent everyone safely across the ford at Jabbok. He camped alone on the opposite bank. Through the dark hours, he wrestled with God, and his hip joint was wrenched as they struggled. As dawn broke, he asked a blessing from his assailant. What is your name? Jacob. Your name is Jacob no longer, but Israel, for you have striven with the divine and prevailed. In the morning, Jacob limped onward towards the meeting with Esau, and he received a hearty welcome and forgiveness. The family have come home to Canaan, as God promised. On the journey to Bethlehem, though, Rachel dies, giving birth to Israel's 12th son, Benjamin. He loved Rachel, but he has her sons now, Joseph and Benjamin, with him. Joseph is his favorite of all, and that will lead to trouble later. The 12 sons give their names to the 12 tribes of Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. The only daughter is Dinah. The end of Jacob's life is spent in Egypt, and that part of the story concerns his son Joseph. Now, God knew the potential and possibilities in Jacob as well as the weaknesses, as he does with all of us. Working with God, Israel is part of the great plan to bless the world through Jesus from the tribe of Judah. For some of us, lockdown has given us time to reflect on our lives, perhaps time to remember things we usually keep well hidden, out of mind. Most of us can recall something that makes us ashamed. But the Bible is full of people who sometimes do wrong, make mistakes. Think of King David, or Simon Peter, or Paul. But God forgives and uses the best of us if we will trust our lives to his hands. Amen.